The Students for Democratic Society were not the first group of Americans to promote a nation with a less centralized government. The League for Industrial Democracy was promoting this ideal since the 1930s. SDS is what the League needed to pass down their ideals to the next generation and propel the League into a new era. James Dean was one of the many cultural influences that shaped an era of protesting. With his roles and demeanor, both on and off the screen, he molded the stereotype of teen rebellion to the children of the baby boomers, who grew up watching him on screen and off. It became normal for teens to thwart power and regulations through this new stereotype. Celebrities were not the only influence on protest culture of the 1960s. Mad Magazine was a satirical print media used to test the limits of social rebellion, and it was all masked by humor. It reached thousands of readers with each issue, one more critical of the American system than the last. In its early stages, SDS partnered with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. SDS was heavily involved in the civil rights movements and protests, and even promoted themselves as a northern arm for SNCC. SDS admired the peaceful yet impactful nature of SNCC's protests and wanted to continue them for their own. On April 17, 1965, the March on Washington gathered thousands of young protesters supporting the anti-war effort, many of whom were members of the Communist Party, which officially broke the ties between the League for Industrial Democracy and SDS, in order for the League to preserve its tax relief as an organization. In addition to the sheer number of participants at the March on Washington, the nature of the protests put SDS on the map as well. The divide between government and its protesters was displayed heavily at this march, and SDS used this fact and images to launch their message to the public. By 1967, members of SDS turned to the guerrilla tactics utilized throughout the Cuban Revolution as the source of effective protesting. Secretary of SDS Carl Davidson makes a statement to express his concern with peaceful protesting, and promotes this new tactic inspired by the Cubans as the only way to make the change they sought since the beginning. Once the revolutionary tactics replaced the traditional peaceful resistance movements, campuses across the country erupted. With increasing numbers and aggravated hostility, campus protests become widespread, and university administration was faced with an aggressive student body. By 1969, SDS becomes one with the Progressive Labor Party, who is known to SDS as the Worker Student Alliance. Numbers in the SDS movement quickly dwindle once the focus of the group moves from anti-war efforts to the protection of workers. In just a few short years after the 25,000 people gathered at the March on Washington, a small congregation of SDS members is the result of a country wary of another threat of agitation from its citizens.